All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And hello, all. It is a delightful third. Thank you. Oh, my gosh, it's overwhelming. I am warmed by your recorded applause, and I must tell you that I have the full crew here today. Albert, our magnificent commissioner of March Madness. He has decided to show up.
Albert, thank you.
I love it. And Kim, playing hurt. She has contracted some illness. As you know, I've had an illness since last Friday night. And Kim has acquired some mystery illness as well. Her voice has been partially compromised. But fortunately, because I don't let her speak much on this show, she really doesn't have much to worry about. What? That's right. That's exactly right. Many of you asked about my hand. I had surgery on my hand, as you know, last week, and I'm in incredible, excruciating pain. Thank you, everyone. And it's a tribute to my concentration and my dedication to this audience that I'm able somehow to pull this off amidst all of these various challenges. Thank you. We have a mission, and we are going to execute that mission. And we're going to post it all on Signal so you can follow that mission step by step. Thank you, everyone. Yeah. So glad that everybody is here, and you're in the middle of a magnificent time that happens only once a year. It is March Madness. March Madness is our answer to March Madness. March Madness, all about basketball. March Madness, all about our drops on this show. We pit them up against each other. The commissioner of March Madness is Albert. Before I even tell you who's going to be joining us on the show today, we have two guests for you, and we have a really great show and some pretty substantial developments to fill you in on. I want to get an update from the commissioner on March Madness. What happened with yesterday's showdown, Commish?
Yesterday's showdown, pretty one-sided, but Sayonara and Ever Seen Anything were the two that advanced yesterday.
Sayonara, sucker, looks to be a formidable opponent through March Madness, and Ever Seen Anything like
Have you ever seen anything like this?
Wow, I didn't think that. This is interesting. I thought Spoil Our Christmas might do well.
Yeah, me too. I think I took a couple losses there.
Spoiler.
Someone did this to spoil our Christmas.
Yeah, forget about go work on Christmas because you're not in March Madness anymore. It's
I
Sayonara versus Ever Seen Anything like it. Yeah.
You still have a perfect bracket.
Wow, Matt, look at you with a perfect bracket.
What?
Bravo, my friend. And Vivian Alshawa, an OG of this show, with us from the beginning, when we were just a little germination of an idea here on YouTube and across the podcast networks. Vivian Alshawa came with us from RKGO radio show, as did many of these people who play March Madness. But look, she is there along with Michael Klein, Vanessa Pacheco. Look at this. Everybody 11-1. Michael Snyder, the culture blaster, is 11-1. Wow. Impressive. Amy and George. Then you get down to the 10-2s. Travis and Chris and Daniel and Ray.
Daniel was, I believe, last year's champ.
Yeah, Daniel Martin. Look at you. You're in the hunt, my friend. 10-2. Ron Holland and Tim and Sally. And
so all these people are still in contention, not too far off. As you can see, the total points. Once we get closer and to the next round, I'll start explaining the best possible scores. But right now, we're just hoping that your records stay intact throughout the first round.
We're on your side, everyone. And now, without any further delay, although we do, as you know, love delaying, but there are two drops that'll go up against each other this hour and two drops for next hour.
Now,
it
March
is
Madness.
Yes.
I can't believe it.
So you'll vote right now in the posts section of our YouTube channel, either for
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Or this one.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
I love Wild Idea. Oh, I hope it does well.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol
involved. Vote for that or for this one.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Voting continues till midnight tonight. I'm excited about watching that one go down.
I like to use both of those drops a lot, so I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, nor do I. I remember when we got Wild Idea, and I think Albert and I talked about it. Like, can we make this a drop that is viable, that is usable, that can work in different situations? And because it's just a little extraordinary. That
it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
But we found that it was super flexible, and we could use it in a bunch of different things. You know, when crazy criminals did stuff, when there was weird political stuff, when somebody would say something ridiculous, propose
the Trump
something
administration
absurd.
made it very easy for us at that time, especially. It was around 2020 when we came up with that, and it was. I remember we just added it, and I was using it a lot. So
yeah. Well, let's see how it does in this one. It's again, it's up against a formidable opponent in the.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
That's a fan favorite, you know. So we'll see. There's some pretty big showdowns early on here in Mark's Madness, but that's the state of the state. Lucy McAllister, my favorite McAllister. What up, Lucy? $20 super sticker to get things.
Shout out.
Big shout out to you, Lucy. Kim is hurting today. The other McAllister. I like to call her the other McAllister. She is hurting today. She's playing hurt. I really respect Kim. She does a lot of work, and you don't see it. She does a lot of work off the air. And now on the air, here she is, stepping up while her voice is compromised. She's saving it now. You'll hear her a little bit later. Watch Stephanie Miller's show on Progressive Voices Network this morning, and Superhuman Tony was there fixing tech problems. LOL, must never sleep. Yeah, Tony works on Stephanie Miller's show. That's exactly right. That's exactly, thank you for that. And thank you for noticing. Do we get to see John Rothmann and David Katz today? The answer, Judy, is yes. You'll see both Rothmann and Katz today.
What?
I know. It's extraordinary. Rothmann normally with us on Wednesdays, couldn't do it yesterday, so we moved him to today. So, look, there's a lot going on. We'll get right into it. I will tell you that some of the stuff will make you laugh and some of the stuff will make you cry. And so...
The Mark Thompson Show.
The bizarro thing that's happening is that, Elon Musk, who is taking control of government like a toddler takes control of a rattle, shaking it wildly without a real plan. He asked, you'll recall, I shouldn't say asked, demanded from all federal workers a message, an email, listing the 5 things they had done that week.
Right. They said you'd be fired if you didn't turn the email in, right?
Exactly. It was under threat of termination. So many people, as you know, there was a controversy at the time. We reported on it. We're told you don't have to respond to this, but a lot of people did respond to that because they're worried about losing their job. Well, when they sent that email back as demanded, there wasn't the infrastructure to even read the email, and it got bounced back. A number of employees across multiple agencies have received bounce back emails indicating that the mailbox they were directed to at the Office of Personnel Management is full, thus preventing them from sending their reports. After submitting their weekly 5 things email on Monday, some federal employees received an automated response saying the recipient's mailbox is full and can't accept messages now.
So they didn't have the infrastructure that they needed to accept all the massive amounts of emails that they required? Great.
He's a tech genius, but he's a big picture guy, Kim. He doesn't really think things through.
Got it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He's busy launching rockets and stuff. You can't bother him with actually focusing on the business of managing government. Yeah. When it comes to administration and infrastructure, even if it's technical, apparently this technical genius couldn't get that done. And his Doge people are too busy firing everyone to worry about whether or not there are infrastructure setups in place to handle the email responses. So after that bizarre story, we get to what's happening on Capitol Hill. As you might be aware, once again, PBS and NPR are in the crosshairs of the GOP. This is not the first time this has happened, but it might be the last time it happens because they might actually succeed in getting rid of NPR and PBS. The biggest public media networks are being accused of bias and being accused of being communist. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, never one to shy away from a controversy like this, where she can hurl and smear. The Georgia Republican who actually organized this hearing, she called it an anti-American airwaves hearing, opened her remarks by deriding PBS and NPR. Deriding is a ding word, by the way. And called both radical left-wing echo chambers that published skewered news reports and indoctrinated children with LGBTQ programming. The leaders of both PBS and NPR testifying that those claims are untrue, arguing that their stations served as a crucial source of accurate information. Sorry, I have a cough.
They think that it's a communist agenda, but NPR and PBS have very high journalistic standards. Very high.
Yeah, I'd suggest that their journalistic standards exceed those oftentimes of what is traditional right-wing media, like a Fox News Channel, for example. But the back and forth was along these lines. Stephen Lynch, who's a Democrat from Massachusetts, said Republican lawmakers would rather go after Big Bird than President Trump.
Karen says, I think MTG is the one who's skewed.
Yeah, well, she's
we know
definitely
that,
a piece of work. If shame was still a thing, he said, this hearing would be shameful. Again, it was organized by a new congressional subcommittee, and Doge represented another front in this extraordinary 2 months of unrelenting attacks, as is noted here. The White House has barred the AP, as you know, from the attendance of many events, any at the White House. You have to cough again, excuse me.
Yeah. Rich says Sesame Street is a commune. Yes, this highlights the communist nature of it, right?
Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And so those are two things that you might view on some level as absurd. There is an absurdity to it, but there's also a real danger to it. I mean, this is what's happening. And I'd also say that the press is being cowed. They're going after media hard. It's easy to go after public media first because, of course, public media depends largely on federal dollars and public dollars. But you've seen what they've done with ABC, CBS, and they're going after other media organizations as well. I think this is represents a real front on the aggressive moves to dominate the propaganda and information that comes to Americans across the board and across the political spectrum. So this is why I think independent media is so important. But we're seeing repeatedly journalists being put in very tough positions, and journalistic institutions, I mean, the LA Times, the New York Times, the Washington Post, et cetera, those are three high-profile examples, being forced to confront how they're going to handle the aggression of this administration. It's scary. It's scary. And so just to review, you've got a government that is being cored out, right? The idea is to dismantle this government, and then the academic institutions, you're going after them, and then you'll go after the media institutions. Now, the judicial institutions are still out there, but they will be, well, already they're being, those judges who are ruling against this administration are being vilified. But I'd suggest that that represents yet another front in this complete takeover. It's an authoritarian playbook. And so even as we laugh about Elmo and PBS and the idea that you would take off Sesame Street because it's a communist or it's some kind of LGBTQ indoctrination, and it's laughable, but it's also part of the plan that's got nobody laughing. So as we continue, I think you'll see more of this, and it's scary. And by the way, we don't just talk about stuff that's wrong and that this administration is doing. We do talk about solutions and ways in which you can organize and ways in which you can make your voice heard. I've talked about it before. You should call. You should write. Traditionally, lawmakers do pay attention to that. Make noise. Even if you're a Democrat and it's a Republican lawmaker, it doesn't matter. Making noise does have an effect. So, but that's the latest on Big Bird, Elmo, PBS. I mean, they do such good work on PBS. I mean, the stuff is just so elegantly done and wonderfully important, you know, to a child's development, to adult development. The documentaries that are done, the American Experience series, in which you have real history being communicated in wonderful ways. The series on the national parks. I mean, I don't need to tell you, Ken Burns' Civil War stuff. This is all, I mean, wonderful stuff. But it's all viewed as disposable because they want to take over the entire landscape. It's scary. It's a bit scary.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Meantime, RFK Jr., everybody's favorite Democrat. Remember, he was a Democrat at one time. He's from that famous family. I don't know if you're familiar with them, the RFK family. His dad was RFK. That's why they call him RFK Jr. But he is going after the health department workers. And when I say going after them, he laid off 10,000 of them. It's a major restructuring of the department. 82,000 people work for HHS, a Health and Human Services Department, and he is trying to reorganize, he says. The layoffs, a drastic reduction in personnel for this health department that doesn't just exist in Washington. You understand that these offices are across the country. When you eat meat, you are eating meat that was approved of and met certain standards set by RFK Jr.'s organization. There's somebody there, a meat inspector, who is making sure that the meat is handled in a certain way and that these creatures are slaughtered in certain ways and that the meat isn't lying around. I use meat as an example. It's also in vegetable fields and across the board. These regulatory aspects of his agency are critical to human health, to America's health. Anyway, they are restructuring the entire place. They're going to create a new division called the Administration for a Healthy America. And you know, when they're renaming something like that, the Administration for a Healthy America, it can only be unhealthy. You can just use the rule of opposites in all of these cases. We're going to do more with less, Mr. Kennedy said, as he acknowledged it would be a painful period for HHS. The 28 divisions of the health agency will be consolidated into 15 new divisions. And the staff cuts are being made in line with President Trump's order to implement the Department of Government Efficiency shrinking of the federal workforce. Yeah. Then there's some slams at the Biden administration, et cetera. But that's the situation with HHS under Kennedy. And so 10,000 federal workers are laid off without regard, I'm guessing, because this is the manner in which things have been done up to this point, for how talented they are, critical they are, and what seniority they have. So, meantime, this all is existing in an environment that is against the Trump backdrop regarding Greenland, Canada, Mexico, and Trump is now saying that the U.S. will go as far as we have to go to acquire Greenland. Now, what does that mean, as far as we have to go? Literally said this and said a U.S. delegation was traveling to the territory this week to, quote, let them know that we need Greenland for international safety and security. We need it, and we have to have it.
Right ahead of a visit by Vice President Vance and his wife, Usha. It's kind of threatening.
And you pointed out yesterday, Kim, that Usha and J.D. Vance are not going to be making sort of the widely talked about kind of tour of Greenland that had originally been talked about. Instead, they're going to be staying at army bases or military bases, I think.
Military installation, yeah.
Yeah, right. So
because they don't want to
That's
run into angry Greenlanders. Can you imagine if Vice President Vance were to walk through whatever town? I almost said Reykjavik, wrong cold island.
that's next, Kim. That's
Yeah,
next.
that's next.
Don't
That's
get
next
ahead of
on the
us.
list.
Yeah.
But
It's
imagine if they were there walking through and the Greenlanders, I mean, they would be pelted with whatever kind of fish.
whatever fish they have there, they'd be pelted by them.
Right.
So he says, we need it. We have to have it. It's an island that from a defensive posture, this is again, my Lord and Savior, Donald Trump speaking. It's an island that from a defensive posture and even offensive posture, that's all the postures. There's a defensive and an offensive. He's covered them both. It's something we need, he said, quote, especially with the world the way it is. I hate to put it that way, but we're going to have it, he said. Asked if he thinks the Greenlandic public will be on board with his plans, Trump said he wasn't sure. He says, I don't know. I don't think they're uneager, but I think that we have to do it and we have to convince them. Ah, nice. Convince them the same way we've convinced all the people that we're deporting right now. It's just time for you to leave this country. And we're convincing you by sending some thugs around to wrap you up, put you on a plane, and send you to a horror show in another country. Yeah. That's the latest on Greenland and Donald Trump. Hey, speaking of the horror shows in another country, we came across something, and I will get the signal stuff. I will get to all of that, I promise. There have been some developments, so I'll get to that. But speaking of horror shows, speaking of horror shows, I wanted the...
It's not a good one.
Thank you. That's what I want. That's what I wanted. Thank you. Speaking of horror shows, I did see this, and Kim brought it up to us in a kind of a pre-show meeting again today. This Kristi Noem video of her... She shoots this video in front of this horrible prison. You know, what is it? This is in... This is in El Salvador, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Albert, do you have it? Let's run. We'll run a little bit of it. Just the inhumanity of it is, turning this into a photo op is really a pretty.
I saw a post. Someone said it reminded them of a concentration camp with these men packed in on top of each other and their heads all shaved. And here she is with her, made sure that her hair was curled and all of her makeup was in place and her super tight shirt, highlights her boobs so that we get her perfect standing in front of this humanitarian grotesqueness.
Well, first of all, that is the way she looks all the time. There is no makeup and no hair, people.
Oh,
okay, so how dare you? Secondly,
the Glam Squad. She took them with her to El Salvador.
She just grabbed that shirt. It was a little something she threw on. I mean, you're really tough on her. Let's watch this, Albert. It is absolutely astounding.
And visiting this facility. And first of all, I want to thank El Salvador and their president for their partnership with the United States of America to bring our terrorists here and to incarcerate them and have consequences for the violence that they have perpetuated in our communities. I also want everybody to know, if you come to our country illegally, this is one of the consequences you could face. First of all, do not come to our country illegally. You will be removed and you will be prosecuted. But know that this facility is one of the tools in our toolkit that we will use if you commit crimes against the American people.
Okay, so
let me say that there are people there, we know of 3 of them, right, who likely didn't commit any crimes against the American people. They were swept up with these other Venezuelans who may or may not have been in gangs and sent to El Salvador. One of them is a gay makeup artist. Another is a soccer player. The third, I forget the profile on the third, but there is a third. And those are the 3 we know about. I mean, this is done, this sweep and incarceration. It's done in the same way that DOJ is pursuing the U.S. government cutbacks. It's done recklessly. It's done without regard for who is involved or what they do. All they know is that these people are from a country other than the U.S. originally, and they're getting swept up and deported before there can even be the basic, and I've mentioned this before, immigration courts are super basic. They're not like a lot of other courts. The process, if you want to think of it that way, the judicial process goes fairly rapidly. So it's not as though it's a big challenge to put these people through that due process. But they don't do it. They just swept them up and move them out. And they're doing the same thing with that PhD student from Yale, I think it was, or Columbia. I mean, it's and the other student from Columbia. I mean, these, at the academic institutions, they're really scared. I don't blame them. There is one student, I believe, also a PhD student from Columbia, who's in hiding now, worried that because they were involved in protests against what was going on in Gaza, that they could be deported as well. There is no, and perhaps this is the most chilling part, there is no due process associated with it. There's no way in which these people can make their case. They can't contact a lawyer. You saw that place, that prison.
There's two new students this week. There's a doctoral student from Iran at the University of Alabama who's been detained. There's a doctoral student at Tufts
Thank you.
from
That was
Turkey
it.
who's
Right.
been detained. So, and these are in addition to the students from Columbia and other schools. So now there are students who have been protesting, which is a right in America, no matter where you're from, because we have freedom of speech here, who, because they have a different opinion than the Trump administration, are being scooped up and sent away.
And the reason this is truly galling is because one of the great things about this country has been, and it's been a struggle. It's not always in place, but it's being taken down like a wrecking ball now, is the notion that you have due process. They can't just scoop you up on the street and imprison you. You will get to see a judge. You will get to have a lawyer. And if you cannot afford a lawyer, one will be appointed. It is a real thing in America. And it exists for all of these people, even those that were scooped up, even those that are not native to this country or born in this country. So the next step is obviously that there is a fear that begins to infect the population. And I think that fear has, as I said, hit universities, it's hit media, it's hit the legal profession. These are dark times from that standpoint.
When do people start caring? As Stephen says here, first they came for the students. Do we not care because the students are brown people from countries that, we don't really, that don't rank on our radar? Because first they start telling students from other countries that we don't have freedom of speech here, and then they start telling the rest of us that. So when is it important as Americans to stand up and say, no, these are rights that we consider incredibly important to the fabric of our country, and it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from? When do we start standing up for that?
It's deeply troubling that we wonder, as you have just wondered out loud, like what the tipping point is. At what point, does everybody go, oh, wait a minute, whoa, we didn't sign up for this. And by then, usually it's too late. So these are really things that should concern all Americans. You're witnessing the rise of the Fourth Reich and its goons, Gestapo, kidnapping people off the street, says TM. I mean, I can't argue with that. I don't understand how you can just scoop up people off the street, as has been done, and deport them or erase them from the society. We don't know what happened to a couple of these people that they have gotten rid of. It isn't all set in stone yet, says Mary D. This is when we need to hit the streets and say no to this BS. And there are coalitions of Americans putting together some protests, etc. But what makes you think we don't care? What do we do? Yeah, Carol Ford says. Yeah, I think Kim's asking the question rhetorically. Obviously, I think many people care. People won't care until something starts to hit them in the pocketbook, says Randy. Otherwise, it's just something happening to other people. I hate to say it, but that probably is the comment of the day so far when it comes to this issue. This is them testing the waters with these students. They will keep going, says Rob J. Yeah. And this is what I was saying about the plan, and then I'll bring Rothmann on Social Security. I mean, they are really, and they've got the tiger by the tail with Social Security. They have gone after Social Security so recklessly, so stupidly, I mean, without regard for what the diminishment of Social Security is going to do to many of the constituents that they represent, that these Republican lawmakers, they're going to have some explaining to do. And as you know, they can't even show up to their town halls or their meetings with constituents anymore. They can't do it. It's a silence that coexists with this power grab, and it is wildly concerning. So, but that's a little bit of what's happening right now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
We've left things on the table we'll get to. And as I mentioned, David Katz in hour 2. We'll talk about what's legal, what's not. And I want to talk a little bit with John Rothmann about this whole signal craziness, the sort of unprofessional, reckless, sloppy nature of this administration when it comes to communications. So, and we've got some breaking news in that area as well. So here he is. He's a presidential historian, author, lecturer, and our former colleague on KGO Radio in San Francisco. How about it for John Rothmann, everybody? Hello, sir.
How are you?
I am better for seeing you, and I wonder if you can give me a quick thought on what we were talking about, which was these deportations, which appear to be done with an aggression and recklessness, that is to say, without regard for due process or even the legitimate histories of some of these people that sort of don't have anything to do in many cases with any kind of a gang, in the case of the Venezuelans, but also distinguished PhD candidates who are being scooped up on college campuses as well. I wonder if you can just give me a thought on all this.
Well, you summed it up very well. It's a disgrace. It's a national disaster. Needs to be. I just heard about the 2 professors at Columbia University who are fleeing to Canada. They've been offered jobs in Canada. They're going there. But what's more upsetting is the Trump administration ignoring the orders of district courts. And then you have the Speaker of the House of Representatives talking about abolishing district courts, because district courts are not in the Constitution. They were created by the Congress. So you have an assault on the judicial process. You have an assault on academic freedom. You have an assault on truth. And all I can tell you is this disaster this week with the lack of security by senior Defense Department officials and the Vice President of the United States and the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense is one of the most shocking, incredibly irresponsible moments in American history. What is very concerning is the deafening silence of the Republicans. This is something that will haunt them for decades to come. But I believe that in the end, the courts are going to act. I'm looking particularly at the Supreme Court, because it's now clear that there are 2 justices who will tip the balance, Amy Coney Barrett and Chief Justice Roberts. And if they vote with the 3 liberals, Trump will lose 5-4 on almost every major issue. And clearly, Chief Justice Roberts, who is fully conscious of the fact
one of the things that
it's his court, so he's concerned. Go ahead.
Yeah, and the courts are really as I was saying before, one of the institutions that that they have to focus on, because they've really cowed media in large measure. I mean, it may not be complete, but I'd say it's in large measure underway. They've cowed academia. You've seen the way that Columbia caved to them to get the federal money, and other institutions are
$400,000
going to fall in line.
It's a bribe.
$400 million.
I want to be clear. I am pro-Israel. I am a Zionist. I am very active in the Jewish community. I oppose what is happening at Columbia University. To dangle money, $400 million, in order to get Columbia to conform to what the Trump administration wants is outrageous. The answer should have been take a flying leap, and I really believe that to be true.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you mention your own personal situation, because you have. So I'll just say that it actually is a net negative for the Jewish community. If anyone could look at this and say, well, they're fighting anti-Semitism, or at least they're on our side.
They're not fighting anti-Semitism.
Exactly. They're not.
It has nothing to do with fighting anti-Semitism. And most members of the Jewish community understand that fully. I can tell you that the horror at what is happening is.
I mean, many of the
real.
students who were, sorry to interrupt, I was going to say, many of the students who were involved in this protest, I mean, half the students there were Jewish. I mean, there was a bunch of Jewish students on the campus of Columbia and the campus of UCLA and all these others. I mean, it wasn't as though it was just Arab students who were protesting. It was really a representation of a coalition.
Let me be clear. If I were at Columbia and this were happening, I would be joining the protest. Not over what Israel does in terms of foreign policy or even about Jew hatred in America. I would be joining it because I believe in academic freedom and freedom of expression, and that applies to whoever takes whatever side in this conflict.
So there it was. Albert's got a couple of pictures now up. It was look, you can argue about the way in which, and I did argue about the way in which these protests both were held and how they were handled. That is different. Very different, a day's drive away from the way you scoop up these students and deport them, and
it's terrible. It's a disgrace.
And you withdraw monies from these institutions, and this was even more about DEI and other things that sort of adjacent to the anti-Semitism. In other words, they rode in on anti-Semitism, but then they had a bunch of other demands for Columbia and other academic institutions.
No, you're absolutely right. May I also point out, because I haven't been here since the fiasco of Donald Trump having signed an executive order about the Alien Act, and now saying, well, he didn't do it, John Adams did. It is one of the most disgraceful things, because all you have to do is go to the White House website and see the darn proclamation signed by Donald J. Trump. The fact is, there is no truth in this administration, and that's what we're learning now in this whole scandal over this Defense Department business.
Yeah, so let's get to the Defense Department business now. One of the things that developed that I thought was worth noting, and then I'll get your thoughts, was that I originally thought Michael Waltz is the guy who was the NSA dude who put together the Signal group. Okay, so
who included Jeffrey Goldberg.
Right. So he's the guy who puts that group together and includes, as John says, Jeffrey Goldberg. So he has done a lot of things. He said, I don't know how that guy got on there. He's a POS, and I don't have his number in my phone. And it was all this stuff. I didn't know this man. It was kind of Trumpian the way he was going after it. The only way the guy could have gotten on there was if he's on your phone. Okay, dude, you can't. I mean,
and if he was formally invited.
Yeah, exactly. So he said, I've never met Jeffrey Goldberg. That's his latest. Well, Albert, show them the picture, if you would please, of Jeffrey Goldberg alongside Michael Waltz. This is at I believe, a White House event or something. There they are, the two of them together. All right. Not only do they know each other, but I promise you, Jeffrey Goldberg's number is on Michael Waltz's phone. That's the only way it could be in a Signal chat like this. So the way they've gone after the reporter and the number of stories that have emerged to cover this up and to explain it away is quite extraordinary. I want you also to see Tulsi Gabbard. Run a little bit of Tulsi Gabbard as she does the two-step in front of this congressional committee.
Member, my answer yesterday was based on my recollection or the lack thereof on the details that were posted there. I was not, and what was shared today reflects the fact that I was not directly involved with that part of the Signal chat, and replied at the end reflecting the effects, the very brief effects that the National Security Advisor had shared.
So it's your testimony that less than 2 weeks ago, you were on a Signal chat that had all of this information about F-18s and MQ-9 Reapers and targets on strike, and you in that 2-week period simply forgot that that was there. That's your testimony?
My testimony is I did not recall the exact details of what was included there.
That was not your testimony. Your testimony was that you were not aware of anything related to weapons packages, targets, and timing.
Member, my answer yesterday was based on.
Yeah, so that
it's a disgrace.
Yeah, so
and may I tell you, they all should be fired, all of them, including the Secretary of Defense. Pete Hegseth is absolutely unfit for the job. We knew it before he was confirmed. But here's the kicker: the silence of the Republicans, who should know better. And I really believe that when elections are held, as they will be in 2026, that in the midterm elections, this will come back to haunt the Republicans. And they're beginning to become aware of it, Mark. They're getting scared, and they should be.
Well, it's interesting. I'd love to talk to you about the elections and whether or not they'll happen in the configuration and the way
Of
we're
course
used
they'll
to it.
happen. Of course
Okay.
they'll happen.
Well,
There's no
we'll talk
question
about it another
it.
time. No, I don't want to get into that now.
You don't? Okay.
I did want to ask you about. You also said the institutions of the United States you have great faith in, and you give me that stuff also, John. I think you have to open your mind to the fact that we're not in your daddy's America anymore. This is a scary time.
If the courts fail, you will be correct.
Okay,
if, as I believe,
it's possible. You gave me the scenario by which it could happen.
If, as I believe, or I want to believe, the structure of the courts holds and the midterm elections produce the results I believe they will, it will be a stunning repudiation. And if you take a look at the polls today, Donald Trump is at an all-time low in popularity. And the reason is because of his own people. And let me tell you, if the Trump administration goes after Social Security and
what do you mean if? They've already done it.
No, I understand, but people haven't felt it yet. You have to feel it. You
try
have to
calling the Social Security Administration. You'll feel it.
That's
as
exactly
you know.
my point.
Yeah,
that's
happening
exactly
now.
my point.
Yeah.
But the American people haven't felt it yet, and that is something that we all have to be completely aware of. If 80 million Americans are denied the Medicare that is required or offered, that too will have an impact. May I say, you just sort of glanced on the question of what's happening at Health and Human Services, where 10,000 people are being laid off. And I can tell you, if there is another pandemic, who do you think they're going to blame? They're not going to blame Robert Kennedy Jr. They're going to blame Donald Trump, both of them, I guess, which is exactly correct. What Donald Trump is doing is digging his own hole. The hubris of this administration is so shocking to me that, and it should be shocking to the American people, and I believe it is.
The GOP, you were mentioning the investigations. There are lawmakers that are pressing for investigations of this group chat. And they are Republican senators calling for this investigation. Now, the Senate Armed Services Committee Chair, Roger Wicker, he's from Mississippi. He actually made the comments that his committee will investigate the matter, but also called on the Defense Department's Inspector General to launch a probe. He said, we'll certainly be asking the IG to look into it. Now, again, I think there's going to be sort of a tepid investigation to this. They sort of don't want to arouse the ire of the king. But nonetheless, just because you mentioned it, I mean, there are rumblings within the GOP.
Of course there are.
Yeah.
They're coming from Republicans. The Republicans aren't stupid. And remember, the first job of every politician is to get reelected. And they are not going to tie themselves to somebody who is falling in the polls. Look, you have the Vice President of the United States and his wife going to Greenland to try to tell Greenland they belong in the United States of America. You have the president still talking about Canada as the 51st state. You have threats to the Panama Canal. You have all of these tensions, not to mention what's going on in Ukraine. It is, to me, one of the most astounding things. And I will say one thing about Donald Trump. What they've done in this administration is throw so much stuff out. It's a way of not letting us focus on the things that really matter. And it's terrible. It's a disgrace.
That was the plan. Bannon spoke of it, and it's been very effective. But just because you mentioned also Pete Hegseth, and he should be discarded, he should be discharged, he should be dismissed, his resignation should be demanded, all of those things that you were mentioning a few minutes ago. Well, President Trump is saying this. Maybe this will be of interest to you, John. Just today, he said, he's going to ask Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to review what kinds of information should be classified. He wants Pete Hegseth's opinion on this Signal group chat and whether there really was any sort of classified information there. The White House has insisted.
Information.
The White House has insisted that no classified information was shared in the chat, even though there were American F-18 fighters referred to and MQ-9 drones and the entire.
If this had been Joe Biden, let me tell you, the Republicans would have been up and thundering.
Sure.
And that's what we have to do.
Yeah. Ask whether he would ask Hegseth if flight times and sequencing should be considered classified. Trump replied that he would consider it. Sure, I'll ask him. Sure, I will. You can view that two ways, frankly. There's a lot of ways to answer that question, but I'd certainly ask him to take a look.
Well, it's very clear. Donald Trump is not in control of his own services. This is the weakest president in terms of grasp of what's going on of any president in American history. It is an absolute disgrace. And if it's any consolation to everybody, there's a recent poll out on rating the presidents, and Donald Trump ranks at the bottom, which is where he belongs.
You saw what he's talking about with Greenland. He continues to get on that. I wanted to get your thoughts on that. He said, we'll do whatever we have to do. Do you think that's a distraction, or is he serious about that?
I think he's serious. That's why the vice president's there. But I want to point out to you that the 5 political parties in Greenland, who generally squabble among themselves, are now united in rejecting whatever Donald Trump is proposing. And that's happening in Panama. People aren't paying any attention to the anger in Panama. People are not paying attention, although we should now, because the tariff, which was slapped on, the 25% tariff, that's going to affect all of us in terms of buying a new car. I bought my new car on December 3rd. Thank God I bought it then and not now. I would be spending another, I don't know, $5,000 on a car. No, Donald Trump, this is all going to catch up with him. The problem is he's doing tremendous damage. So the next logical question is, how do you heal the damage? And I am convinced that when Donald Trump is gone and the Democrats are back in the majority and in the White House, a lot of this stuff will simply be history, but it will be history with a lesson. I actually made an offer to the University of San Francisco. I said, I want to come back in 4 years and teach a course on the Trump presidency. I think this is the greatest national disaster, bar none, since the American Civil War.
Well, again, I will discuss with you at another time whether or not the Democrats will ride to power again. But I also feel as
there's no alternative. Do you understand? People say that there's no alternative. And I want to remind you.
I mean, here's the alternative narrative. The alternative narrative is that Republicans are now in control of all the levers of power. They have gone after universities. They've gone after media. They've gone after justices by calling them out by name. They're already, you talk about the judicial system. It's very much, I would suggest, on the chopping block. They will have cored out government, the institutions and regulatory structures to in any way guarantee us a safe election. And it would be very easy for this president to declare in many ways, pointing to any number of disturbances and even just in an arbitrary way, he could declare a martial law and he could suspend elections. Absolutely, he could do it. I don't believe
that will happen. I think suggesting that is a mistake. I want to remind people that in 1942, as World War II was beginning, there was a suggestion that the congressional elections be suspended in this country. Democrats and Republicans, people who supported Roosevelt and opposed Roosevelt, stood up together and said, absolutely not. We are going ahead with elections. I also want to remind you, elections are not national. The president completely missed the point in his executive order. We learned the lesson that it is a state-by-state decision. And I happen to believe very strongly, and I say this emphatically, there is no way that Donald Trump can move to subvert that system. And were he to try to do it, Democrats and Republicans would react with equal harshness. I believe that. You can only intimidate people, bully people so far. But we have to be very practical. What happens now to two things that stand in the way of Donald Trump: the courts, which I hope have the courage to stand up and speak out, and the other is the election. And those are the two things that I'm counting on.
Yeah, so he'll get to the election second. He'll take care of the courts first. I think that the idea somehow that
he's not taking care of the courts. You can't replace. Do you know what Chief Justice Roberts said? Did you report this on your program? Chief Justice Roberts said when Trump talked about and the others talked about impeaching justices, Chief Justice Roberts came out and said, no, you appeal in the court system.
Did we report it? We talked about it for a whole day, and David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, spoke of it at length. No, it's okay. But I mean, no, of course, we're not going to skip over something like that. But John, you were calling us back and recalling a much more civil time in America when people used to say, my distinguished colleague from Mississippi is...
No, I'm not recalling that.
I mean, that's not the way it is anymore, man.
No, I'm
He's
not
calling out judges by name. They are doxing judges. They're going after the judicial system that way, John.
And it has to be fought. Yeah. Democrats and Republicans together have to fight back. And Chief Justice Roberts seems to be leading the fight against that. Now,
well, let me push back with you on that with you, because I think Roberts didn't go far enough, and here's what I mean by that. No, let me finish. Let me finish. He didn't go far enough. Do you know why? Do you know why he didn't go far enough? Okay, then let me tell you. He didn't go far enough because He didn't say, and a judge's decision from the bench has to be respected. He didn't say those Venezuelans should be brought back to this country.
Yes,
he
I
didn't
understand.
talk about due process. Instead,
want
he
you to
only
understand.
talked about impeachment. He covered his own ass as a judge.
I don't disagree with your basic premise that there is something seriously wrong. That's what I've been saying and talking about before numerous groups here in Northern California and beyond. But I have to believe, and maybe I'm wrong, but I believe that in the end, the hubris of Donald Trump and the Republicans will be called to account. If it's not, Mark, then we're in deep trouble as a nation, and I mean all of us. And I say that respectfully, and I understand how passionately you feel, but I'm more prepared to fight for what I believe America should be than give up on it.
I feel passionately because I see that we are in this dark place, and it was pointed out that Roberts is the one who gave him that immunity. I mean, it's crazy. This hubris comes from a place that is informed in part, John. You'd have to concede by the fact that SCOTUS gave this guy a lot of power.
There's no question that 5-4 vote. But let me also point out to you that when a president exceeds power, the court can reverse itself. And the court has reversed itself, whether Plessy versus Ferguson, on Roe v. Wade, on frankly, so many issues I can only tell you, that's what has to happen. If there is such an abuse of power, which I see happening now, I have to believe, I must believe, that the American people will react strongly and repudiate what is happening. Take a look at the polls. Donald Trump can see, but more important, the Republicans in Congress can see what's happening. And as that slide continues, and as these abuses of power continue, I believe there will be a response, a vigorous response.
I hope you're right. At one point in your run, you mentioned what would it be like if Joe Biden had done this on the signal stuff and all the rest. And I thought it was interesting that Hillary Clinton, who, as you know, suffered so horribly at the hands of Trump, lock her up and the private server and all of that. And they dined out on that and got him to the presidency, I think, largely on that. Right. So she reposted something from Piers Morgan, who, of course, is a conservative guy. And she even said, I never thought I'd be retweeting Piers Morgan, but he's right. And those who are watching on YouTube can see this now. And if you don't consider this to be classified info about imminent war plans, Piers Morgan wrote, it may be that you're too partisan to recognize the truth when it slaps you around your tribal chops.
Piers Morgan is right.
If this had happened on Biden's watch, he said, Republicans would have rightly gone berserk. And then
I have said the same thing over and over again in my public statements, but I want to be crystal clear on this. There is a reaction taking place now among Republicans. If you're right and the Republicans cave on all this, then the American system as we know it is dead. But if the American system is dead, Mark, then the whole country is in trouble, and that's why we have to fight back. We have to fight back with everything we have, and that means we've got to back the judges. It means we've got to organize for the 2026 election, and it means programs like this have to be supported by people who want to hear these kinds of discussions.
And for now, programs like this can exist, independent media. But it's definitely these are challenging times. And
yeah,
that's
it's not
why
the same, by the way, as when you and I were on KGO, because there the public airways really responded. What KGO is now, it doesn't exist anymore. What they're doing are the talking heads from KSFO. Let me just add one more thing. When this whole story broke, I turned on to Fox. They ignored the whole story.
That's right. I did the same thing. It's very funny you say that. Yeah, for an entire day.
Yeah, it was absolutely appalling. And I hope people will understand that. But the people in this country will react. I know they will, because we don't have an alternative. Otherwise, Mark, America is not the United States of America anymore.
Biden had to unilaterally declare J6ers. Well, let me just look at I'm just looking at different comments.
Biden pardoned the January 6th committee.
Declared January, including Don, a.k.a. Red Dawn, seditions, insurrection, and have him incapable to unqualified for ascension to office under the 14th. Yeah, I mean, there was really a, that would have been interesting, John. Let me ask, let's run that out. I think that's William Knight in our comments had a sort of it's provocative if you run it out in a different way. Could Biden have done something with Trump declaring him enemy of the state,
No.
you know,
The answer is
seditious
no.
insurrectionist. He couldn't have
No.
declared him such, even with
No.
with the newfound immunity that SCOTUS gave him.
No. What would
No.
have had to happen is it would have had to go to court. And if you remember Mitch McConnell's comment, the reason he voted against the second impeachment was because he was convinced the courts would react. The courts, unfortunately, did not react, that is the Supreme Court, in the way that it should have. But I can't do anything more than give you my visceral reaction that we must continue to fight. I refuse to be discouraged. Every commentary I do in my own podcast and in my public appearances, all I do is talk about the violations of the Constitution. And let me tell you, having worked for Richard Nixon, I'm in a better position to understand this than most people. What Donald Trump is doing is subverting the American system. And that has to be emphasized and pointed out. By the way, I made one other suggestion that I know there's a lot of concern about the Democrats. Do you remember when the Republicans, after the 1964 election, the Republican leader in the Senate, Everett Dirksen, and the Republican leader in the House, Charlie Halleck, had the Ev and Charlie show? It's time for Schumer and Jeffries to do their own show. I think every day they should be holding a press conference, pointing this out as a unified force.
I think Schumer
Arguing
should not do anything public. I think he's not a great messenger. I don't think Schumer is a good
yeah,
messenger.
but he's the leader.
I'd rather have you every day. I like that. See what you do. You're passionate. You're a great messenger. I mean, you and I disagree on a lot of stuff, but my God, you're the kind of guy the Democrats need. And you're not some young kid who's like 35 years old and, you know, like an AOC. You're a guy with real gravitas. They need someone like that. You got to admit, John, Schumer may be a great, he may be a great legislator, but he is not someone you want out front in the cameras. I'm sorry. He's not.
I understand what you're saying, but what I need are Democrats standing together. The Democrats in the Senate and the Democrats in the House have leadership. That leadership is a very important point. And by the way, if you want to nominate me for a seat in Congress, I'd be happy to accept it. And even if I were elected, I'd join you every Wednesday.
I'd rather have you on. I really would. I'd rather have you out there in front of cameras every day. You can make a point passionately. You know how to speak. James Watson says, I think what John is saying is that as bad as things look, we can't become cynical and just give up. No one wants to give up, but I do think you have to be realistic about the challenges you're facing. But I think it's true. John is sort of saying, hey, we got to get our act together, and I believe in the American people. I don't believe in the American people the way John does. I mean, I believe in a lot of the American people, but hey, the American people just elected these guys, okay? So you can't tell me how great the American people are.
Half the American people did not vote for them. There is a vast number of people, what Richard Nixon once called the great silent majority. And I'm telling you, that majority is seeing what is happening. It's playing out before their eyes. And if I'm wrong, Mark, then our days in this country are numbered. But
well, I'll tell you this. It's not that you're wrong that there are people out there, the great silent majority, but you are, I think, naive if you think that all of those people are going to show up to the polls. They were no-shows. They were no-shows the last time. And that's presuming that we have a vote. And as you know, I don't know that that's going to happen.
I reject the notion, the language you're using completely, that there won't be a vote. If that were to happen, Mark, this would not be America anymore. We would be thundering. And the Democrats and the Republicans alike. Remember,
there are a bunch of things happening right now that aren't America anymore. It's ridiculous. Look at what they're doing in government. They have a guy and they have the richest man in the world coming in and decapitating government, destroying it, dismantling it. He has no official role in government.
I agree.
That's America?
Don't deflect. You have to focus on the simple fact. And you're going to hear from our colleague, Mr. Katz, in the next hour, very clearly what we have to do in terms of the law. And I haven't talked to him in advance, but I know that's what he'll do. But I refuse to surrender to this. I refuse to be silent about it. And I refuse to accept the idea that Donald Trump can run over everybody. He can't. We've got to stop him, and we will.
John is right, says V. Richard. I think the non-voters are against Trump. Well, dude, the non-voters are irrelevant. I mean, they are being led to slaughter, the non-voters. And at least the voters, those of us who did vote, we're being led to slaughter, but we at least voted against our slaughter.
Terry here says you're absolutely right.
Thank you. We need more Terry Taylor.
Terry, three cheers for you. Except if Terry, if Mark is right, we are in deep doo-doo.
We are in deep doo-doo, John. All right, I'll see you next week. Love my John Rothman.
On Wednesday.
On Wednesday, around the political world with John Rothman. Love chasing you around the schoolyard. See you, my friend.
Pleasure.
Bye-bye, John.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, I love my John Rothman. I love my John Rothman. Look, America needs an opposition party, and they need messengers and media figures like Rothman who can speak. Again, I can disagree with Rothman about a lot of stuff and about the state of America and what constituencies are going to show up on election day and all the rest. But I mean, the Democrats don't have anybody who speaks like Rothman. I mean, they've got Bernie Sanders, AOC, Jasmine Crockett. There are a few. Don't get me. I want to say they have no one. But wheeling out Chuck Schumer, and again, he might be a great legislator. It's not his legislative skills that I'm really remarking on. Sadly, it's a media environment that demands more than Chuck Schumer can step up with. So Rothman has my vote, says Rick. All right. Albert, from the sublime to the ridiculous. We must, I believe, first update the state of the state when it comes to Mark's Madness. Can you please fill us in as Commissioner of Mark's Madness, Albert? I need a quick update, if you would.
Yes, and
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes.
The first hour voting is going. It is overwhelmingly love it when you're angry.
Oh my God, I can't believe my darling drop is not going to make it. Oh. Again, if you had just joined us in the first hour, you'll be able to vote until midnight tonight on our YouTube channel under posts. The two that are going up against each other in this first hour.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Is that the one? Is that it or not?
Yes, I was just previewing the next one. It's actually 50-50 for
it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Those two go up against each other, and you're saying it's 50-50 right now.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Thank you for putting it on screen. Bet my lunch and wild idea. Oh, it's a dead heat. Wow. You can vote again until midnight. Just go to the YouTube channel, The Mark Thompson Show, and scroll over to posts. And under posts, you can see it. Now, this hour, there are another two going up against each
Mark's
other.
Madness.
Yes.
I can't believe it.
All right, if you have the courage to wade in, here we go. You'll vote for either.
No.
Or.
I love it when you're angry.
Oh, it's a little Simon.
No.
Or.
I love it when you're angry.
It's no versus I love it when you're angry. Vote in the.
No. I love it when you're angry.
Vote in the post section of our YouTube channel until midnight, and good luck. I don't know, Albert. I don't know how to handicap that one.
It's early, and the vote just got released, so it's.
Love it
it's
when you're
looking
angry
love it
with
when
just
you're
very
angry.
few votes. Yeah, very few people. Don't pay any attention to it. That's way too early. Way too early to call. We're not projecting a winner here at the Mark Thompson Show. There's no winner projected. Kim, I feel as though we have to ask you to give us an update on what's happening. Is your voice up to it? I also have
I think so.
Voice challenged as well, but you've been very cool to show up today. And I gave Kim the option. I said, well, if you don't feel it, I mean, you can dance out. We don't need you. I don't want you to suffer. But she has, she's shown up, so we need to put her to work. So, Kim, Chit's not in Mark's Madness. This and
No,
it was
but I
tough.
think her other drop is one of the favorites.
Her other drop may go all.
I blame you.
That may go all the way. I blame you for sure. All right,
Well,
Kim's
especially
news.
since blame is very popular right now. I mean,
Yes, that's true.
yeah, it's a great week for blame.
For blaming other people. That's absolutely
Yeah.
true.
Sure, absolutely.
All right, Kim's news, and then the great David Katz as we continue. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. The accidental sharing of military attack plans with the Atlantic journalist will be the focus of an emergency hearing this afternoon. Yay! And this after an advocacy group sued, claiming the department secretaries and intelligence chiefs ignored federal records laws by using the auto delete features on the Signal app. Is this a way to get around keeping records of these things, Mark?
Yeah. Oh, exactly. By the way, that's the problem here. That we're, as I've mentioned before, we're supposed to retain all of these records, all of these, even situations that are top secret involving war plans. They are kept. It doesn't mean that the public will ever see them. It just means that they are maintained. It's part of these are the precepts of our democracy. It's the people's voice being reflected by these various people who are in power. So yeah, it's a way to avoid record keeping. Sure.
Republicans have been downplaying the breach, which saw officials, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, discussing airstrikes in Yemen. And by the way, not only please excuse my voice, but please excuse the dog dream noises as my golden retriever is asleep behind me, making those, those dog dreams, little yips as they're running in their sleep. Yeah.
Best part of the show, I think. So,
right.
Yeah, I mean, I would say...
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, I think it's great.
President Trump's new tariffs on automobiles are causing economic uncertainty. Wednesday, Trump signed an executive order putting 25% tariffs on foreign-made cars and trucks, set to go into effect on April 2nd. He said the order aims to increase domestic manufacturing of cars and auto parts. The environmental group, the Sierra Club, claims the tariffs will increase car prices for Americans and hurt working families.
Well, there's no question that this is inflationary, and I don't know how far down the road we will, you'll pardon the expression, down the road. I don't know how far in the future we're going to see any sort of domestic increase in production as a result. It's, we'll explain tariffs again. I've explained them before, but I just think that there's no question they're nakedly inflationary. And what I will say, then we can move on, but I'll say that, remember, when you charge now $50,000 for a car that was $40,000, when you charge $50,000 because it's a foreign car, what can the domestic automakers do? They can charge more for their cars because they know that their foreign competition is also more expensive. So everybody raises their prices. The foreign manufacturers raise them because they have to, because there's a tariff. And the domestic manufacturers, the domestic cars, they become more expensive because they can. They are able to. But both raise the price for the consumer, and that's why it's inflationary.
Speaking of cars, a man is in custody accused of committing a targeted attack at a Tesla collision center in Las Vegas. According to Las Vegas police, Paul Kim is charged with arson and possessing an explosive device. 5 vehicles were damaged, and police say they believe the same person who set the fires also fired gunshots into the cars. The word resist was spray painted onto Tesla's front doors as well.
Yeah, that ain't cool. That's not good.
President Trump is withdrawing his nominee for U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. In a post on Truth Social, Trump said it is essential that New York Congresswoman Elise Stefanik stay in the House as Republicans need every seat they can get. The president said Stefanik has been vital to pushing forward his administration's agenda. He added he doesn't want to take a chance on anyone else running for her seat. She kind of got screwed there, didn't she?
Man, she really did. She was such a good soldier that she got screwed by being a good soldier. That's just great.
Sorry, you're just too valuable where you are. We can't give you the promotion now.
Exactly.
No.
So, it's you're overqualified for this job. It's when they tell you that. It doesn't matter. I wanted that job so badly.
Sorry, Elise, you're stuck in Congress.
This is interesting from Sylvain. Stefanik's district hit real hard by Trump's tariffs and Canadians boycotting her district. Oh, interesting. So this could be a rough ride for her, even if she remains in Congress, as she's apparently going to.
Federal authorities are claiming a Turkish student arrested this week is being detained because she supports Hamas. In a statement, a Homeland Security spokesman said their investigation found Rumeysa Öztürk was supporting a foreign terrorist organization. They called it grounds for visa issuance to be terminated. Her lawyer says Ozturk was maintaining a valid F1 status as a PhD student at Tufts University in Massachusetts, and that no charges have been filed against her that she was aware of. The FBI says one of the top leaders of the MS-13 gang has been arrested in Virginia. The unidentified 24-year-old man was taken into custody this morning. U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says the takedown was a joint operation between the FBI, the ATF, ICE, the VSP, and the Prince William County Police. In the South Bay, San Jose City Council in Bay Area approves a program in which the city's fire department can charge people now for its emergency medical personnel treatment. 23 other California cities also charge first responder fees, including San Francisco, Napa, Vallejo, the city of Alameda. So starting January 1st of 2026, San Jose Fire will be able to send a $427 bill to patients who receive emergency medical care. If you're uninsured, you'll be able to pay a reduced fee or get the fee waived altogether.
Well, they do that to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Exactly. Yeah. Remember, remember, folks, tip your waitresses and your first responders. Okay, everyone. It's
what?
I thought we paid taxes already to hire everyone. Do we need
that's
to?
the idea. Right.
Oh.
That was the idea. The old days. Now we pay taxes, but we're still privatizing everything. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
David Katz is standing by, just to let you know.
Oh, very good. Okay.
So
well, Kim will finish out her news. And then
let me wrap it up talking about breast milk, because there is a breast milk flavored ice cream that is due out. It's Frida. They are celebrating this new 2-in-1 manual breast pump with a new breast milk ice cream. It doesn't actually contain real breast milk, but it's the flavor.
What?
The flavor of breast milk. It aims to bring out the
what the hell is the flavor of breast milk? I don't know. I'm sorry.
It's
Maybe
good that
everybody
you
knows.
don't know this. It's a sweet.
I've never seen anything like it.
You've lost your memory on this. It's fortified with the same nutrients found in breast milk, like omega-3 fats and vitamins like iron, calcium, zinc, vitamins B and D.
Put that coffee down.
Yeah, put your breast milk. Put that breast milk down.
That's right. This report sponsored by Coachella Valley Coffee.
Oh, I love my Coachella Valley coffee. I must tell you. It's a thing I look forward to every day. My Coachella Valley coffee. You can look forward to it every day in your house.
We run SJ with a $10 contribution to the show. Says, thank you for the recommendation on Coachella Coffee, Mark. Just got my first few bags from them yesterday, but please tell them to stop using Uline boxes for shipping, because that company is mega MAGA.
It is true that Uline is. You know, this is something I was talking about yesterday, that we do these purity tests. I mean, it's sad we all do them. And I just don't, I think, like, for example, Coachella Valley Coffee is spectacular. They're so amazing in the product that they produce. It's the best coffee on earth. It's the best tea you will taste. They are so great with customer service, and they seed businesses, women-owned businesses across Latin America and Africa, and so in other words, they're all about opportunity, everything good. But there's the one thing that they use this Uline to package their stuff, and I guess it's true. Uline is a MAGA thing, but everything else is perfect with them. So may have to just let them slide on that. You know, you can do that game everywhere, but I will tell you that it is the best coffee, and I'm so glad it's worked out for you. Everybody who has gone to their site, order their coffee, etc. In fact, David K. Johnston, over the moon. You remember just a couple of weeks ago, he said, "Oh my God, this Coachella Valley coffee is so terrific." So
once you taste it, you're not going back.
I encourage you, but do use our discount code, because it's a boutique roastery. It's all hand roasted, and as I say, it comes. It's quite a special product. So it's going to cost more than some discounted bean that's been lying around for months. This is fresh crop. Mark T is your discount code, 10% off. Mark T at checkout, and you will get 10% off.
Joan Hollywood says, is it too early to start drinking? You can put whatever you want in your Coachella Valley coffee.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
There is that.
There you go.
Yeah.
This report is over, and I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
Girl, you just woo.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thompson, party of four.
This is Mark Thompson.
Feels great.
It was great. I loved it.
When they raided Mar-a-Lago, God didn't like that.
Right on, everybody. Right on. We're in the middle of Mark's Madness. This hour, we have 2 drops going up against each other. Last hour, 2 went up against each other, but you can vote until midnight tonight in our YouTube channel under posts. Again, Bet My Lunch against Wild Idea in hour 1. Simon's No, No, No versus I Love It When You're Angry in hour 2. So please vote responsibly, everyone, and do vote with enthusiasm. And now, without any further delay, even though we do love delaying, let me recognize one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world. You can find him on British radio and television, across the ocean to New Zealand and Australia, and of course, across America on Fox News Channel, also on News Nation. They use him in New York on the Fox, what is it, WNY? What is it there? I'll ask him what the call letters are. Not important. He joins us now. He's a former federal prosecutor, now a defense lawyer in Southern California. How about it for David Katz? What are the call letters? What are the call letters on the Fox station in New York?
You know, you've really got me. I know it's a Fox 5 in New York, but I don't want to get it wrong.
I know that you also do Fox in Washington, D.C., where I grew up. It's WTTG, but I don't know what it is. I should know that, though. It's really, anyway, not important.
I always love that one because I figure Alito or Thomas are going to get a snack, and they have Fox on. And
yes,
I come on with a contrarian view or an honest opinion of the judicial temperament of the two of them. So I always get a kick out of that, and I enjoy it in London. London, I'm on really early in the morning when the MPs are driving to work.
Oh, of course.
Them sitting on the wrong side of the car driving to Big Ben, right? Or by Big Ben.
Yeah,
and
that's marvelous. Of course.
Commentary on what we former colonists are up to now, which have been some pretty crazy things since Trump has been back in there.
Such a great call. I didn't even think of that. You know, the audience is pretty influential people who are listening to you in both those instances. Look, I want to get into a couple of things that are so dispiriting and that concern me so much, and I think many Americans. And that's something we touched on last week, and I think we're going to speak about it in the weeks to come. But what we're learning about these Venezuelan deportations is something that really both fascinates me and, as I say, it really bums me out that these deportations were handled aggressively, sloppily, as kind of a lot of things have been handled in this administration. And many innocents were scooped up. I don't know how many of these people are innocents. We know of 3 of them who would appear not to be gang members of any kind. But again, there's been no due process to establish it. Can you speak to the state of this and how this may play out, and sort of speak to the same way in which these people were scooped up and moved to El Salvador in prison, how there are now university students who are suffering that same fate?
Well, I'm hoping that Republicans and independents, as well as Democrats, get this idea of due process. I mean, everyone should be concerned about the government making big mistakes. They do. They make big mistakes. And so we have independent boards, and we have federal and state judges who are making sure that we get due process. They're making sure that the government doesn't get it wrong. And it's obvious that with these people who were deported, that the government got a lot of it wrong. It was very hasty, Mark, and it was done without any government agency or board, any judicial agency or independent board looking at it. Now, probably what ICE would tell you was they had these people in custody. They made up these lists from these people who were already in custody, and they said, okay, some confidential report says that this person is a gangbanger with this Tren de Aragua, this Venezuelan gang, or that we actually have maybe some independent source for it. But it's all nonsense. It's all like that guy Curveball who said all of those things about Iraq, that we went to war, and they weren't true. So relying on these confidential sources, you know, we have ways of testing information. And before somebody is sent to a third country, I mean, the dimensions of this are so awful. First of all, they're not even being sent back to their country of origin. They're being sent to a third country. Think of that if you're an American who gets scooped up, and maybe you've come to this country from, let's say, the UK or you come to this country from, you name it, from China. Suddenly you're in a prison in El Salvador, a third country where you've never been, you know nothing about, you probably don't, maybe don't speak the language. I mean, a lot of those people are Spanish speaking. And so you have the problem, Mark, that these people now are down. How do you get out of there? How do you get released from there? Now, one interesting thing, because we don't have good relations with the Maduro government, and so the Maduro government in Venezuela would like to, you know, stick a little shiv into us. Supposedly they've hired a bunch of very good lawyers, and they are now making habeas corpus motions under El Salvador law that these nationals should be released. And of course, they've got databases which are going to show that some of these Venezuelans are not gangbangers. And I'm sure the administration will come back and say, oh, yes, they are. A curveball told loose, a loose ball over here that this guy was at a party which was hosted by Tren de Aragua. And you're going to see how terrible it is that we don't have due process in these situations. As to where the case actually stands, it looks like the government is going to lose it. Yes, you heard it. It looks like the government and Trump are going to lose it. That's one reason that they started this enormous drumbeat against the judge. But the judge has basically been affirmed so far by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. That's the court right under the U.S. Supreme Court, which said it looks like they'll win on the merits. It looks like these people who were deported, their due process rights were violated. The judge was correct. Trump did this all very hastily. And then the other part of it is that he did it so hastily. He issued this sort of Friday midnight order, which these lawyers for the Venezuelan would-be deportees were very diligent, found out about, managed to schedule a hearing before this very hardworking judge on Saturday. And then on Saturday, this judge issued orders that it seems very clear the government has not complied with. So now that he's asked some hard questions and the government's refused to answer a federal judge's questions, I'll say that again. A Department of Justice under Trump refused to answer questions in a lawful proceeding conducted by a federal judge where the federal judge was trying to get to the bottom of it. They now say that these are state secrets, Mark. These are state secrets. These are like the nuclear codes. These are like what our relations stand right now with Taiwan and how we're going to defend them. These are big state secrets. Mark, what are these big state secrets? What time the plane took off from where it left in Texas? Was it or was it not under international waters, and where? This is not something that was prospective like this, what you call chat gate that we have right now, where they're telling about future things that haven't happened yet, and they're telling all these details on an unsecure device. These are things that have now happened weeks ago when this plane left or didn't leave Texas and went to a friendly country, El Salvador, and where it was in international space over, and make sure you get this right, Mark, I don't want you to be excluded from any White House press conferences, the Gulf of America, where it was over the Gulf of America. Those are state secrets. This is a lie. This is a farce. This is a contempt of a federal judge. And I think the judge is going to hold some people in contempt. I think that there are some people who either better have their toothbrushes packed in that subsequent proceedings in front of that judge, or they better get ready to say who high up in the administration approved that plane not being turned around, even when they knew full well that a judge had just ordered that it be turned around. Who was in contempt of that federal judge's order? He'll get to the bottom of that, this Judge Boasberg.
That's interesting. So you feel as though this won't be, even though they're trying it, an effective ploy on the part of the government?
No, not at all. Not at all. This judge will do his duty. He will follow this, get to the bottom of it. And, this is Trump. All this noise, all this commotion, something else crazy happens day 2, and then something more crazy happens on day 3. Then he hopes you forget about what happened on day 1. No, all these things will have consequences. Defying a federal judge's order will have consequences. People will get in a world of trouble, as they could, because they did defy his order. You can't do that in America. That's the rule of law. Everybody knows that in America on some level. Although they may be partisan, people know you cannot defy federal judges, or you can't defy any judge's order. I mean, think of it in your own life. Everyone knows they can't defy the judge's order. You get held in contempt. You get punished. That's for real. The judge says do something orally or in writing. You hear it. You better do it. You see it in writing. You better do it. But you can't wait around and say, oh, I'm not going to do it until I see it in writing. That's another bogus defense that they're trying to make to the contempt charge.
Is this legal, David Katz? The Trump administration may have revoked more than 300 visas to date. It might be more than 300 at this point, but we do it every day, says Marco Rubio. Every time I find one of these lunatics, I take away their visas. At some point, I hope we run out because we've got rid of all of them, as he said, but we're looking every day for these lunatics that are tearing things up. And by the way, we want to get rid of gang members too. He said this at a news conference today in Guyana. Is that legal? You can just, I suppose, you can revoke visas anytime you want, right?
Well, I think little Marco Rubio is going to keep earning that sobriquet, right? Not on account of his height, but because of his real disrespect for the law. He was supposed to be the bright light in that administration. And I think by now he's thinking two things. Number one, he's thinking, I wish I hadn't given up my Senate seat because I'd be head of the Foreign Relations Committee. And, you know, when Trump gets mad at him, that's it. It's Sessions all over again.
Sure.
He'll fire him in a heartbeat. And he realizes that he's just another lackey. He's just another, Trump rooting section and all the honor of being Secretary of State. And now he's picked so many fights, generally with our allies. And so I think he's thinking, wow, this job wasn't what I thought it was going to be when I saw Kerry. And I thought back on people like Kissinger. This was not the job that Kerry or Kissinger had. This is a little mean job going around being a hatchet man for Trump. So I think that this is just awful. It's ironic because people like his ancestors came here from Cuba so that they could speak freely in America. And now people who are getting PhDs and advanced degrees can't speak freely about this situation in Gaza and the Middle East. And, you know, some people have asked me this because I have an identifiably, Jewish name, David Katz, what my views are on it. And I guess was it Thomas Jefferson? Who was it who said, I disagree with them and I'll fight to the death to allow them to be heard. This is not America at all. These people have a right to express their opinion. They have a right to express support for Hamas if that's their opinion and try to explain why they think Hamas or their side of that argument has the better of it. That's what we do in America. That's what we do at universities. We debate things like that. We take positions. This woman who got basically abducted off the street in
She's
the Boston
a PhD
area,
student, 30-year-old PhD student at Tufts. Yeah, go ahead.
There's a video of her. And you think she's being abducted. You think that some gang, you think it's Tren de Aragua is abducting her. No, that's our officers. That's
Six plainclothes officers surrounded her as she walked alone. She was, they didn't show badges. She was restrained and they took her away.
And she's screaming, what are you doing? Give me my phone. They handcuff her. And this happened to a graduate student in broad daylight who goes to Tufts University. Her great offense against America, that she should be booted out and not be allowed to be a guest in this country anymore, is that she wrote an op-ed piece along with somebody else where she espoused some positions that supposedly were pro-Hamas positions. And I'm sure what we have in America is we have another op-ed piece that explains the other side of the story. And we're in America. And we're not in Turkey. I mean, it's sort of ironic. And then Turkey, of course, has to act outraged. If an American were over there and you freely expressed your views in Turkey, I wonder what would happen to you in Turkey. Probably just about the same thing. Six masked guys would grab you on the street in Turkey. So Turkey is like Hungary. They're not the noble side of this free speech.
Right. There'd be fewer people surprised if it happened in Turkey. Exactly.
So what do I think about it? You have to look at the actual immigration law, and it may be that there's been some due process decisions, that it may be that they can't revoke you that quickly, that they have to give you some time, that they have to give you a hearing, that they have to give you a right. But what's so awful about these cases is that they take you into custody. None of these people are flight risks. And then they try to whisk you away to some hellhole in Louisiana. The only hellhole in the world isn't in El Salvador. We have these INS and ICE hellholes. And one notorious one is in Louisiana, which appears to be where they've taken her. And they also took that fellow about 2 weeks ago. And they're just outrageous. I mean, Trump, all he does is project. When he says he's going to do something to help free speech, no, he's not. He's going to curtail free speech. He's going to not give free speech to anyone who disagrees with him and his party line. And it's just awful to see that. The good news is that these universities, I think, are fighting back. I think everyone is outraged by this. The universities have come forward like Tufts and said, we didn't cooperate. We didn't give them any student records. I think the universities are holding firm. And the other thing I just heard on the radio driving over here to do the show, Mark, was that 3 Yale professors have actually taken positions at a Canadian university, at the University of Toronto. They had the ability, unlike many of us, much as I might like to protest in my fantasies and go be a Canadian lawyer, oops, I'm not a member of the Canada Bar. And lots of other, and I don't have any experience in Canadian law. I would be a very poor choice to be somebody's Canadian lawyer in Canada. And that's the problem with a lot of people who would like to go to Canada. They don't really have job skills where they probably do that well in Canada. But here's three people who really have the freedom to go be professors. And guess what? They've all decided that they don't want to live in this country under Trump, and they have the wherewithal economically and professionally to go take these jobs at the University of Toronto.
It's not even just a question of not wanting to. They feel vulnerable. I mean, these people who are working in academic institutions now should feel vulnerable. David, I see it as yet another front on the war that Trump is pursuing across the board. I mean, talking about media institutions, judicial institutions, academic institutions, and governmental institutions. He's gone after all of them, and you know, it's not over. And so I can see why they would fear for their freedom. You know,
the good thing about criminal defense attorneys, if you've been doing this for a while in federal court, you've seen so many overzealous federal prosecutors take so many unreasonable positions. You've been in front of so many hanging judges, so many who you cite exactly what the law is, and they seem to have a bias toward the government. You go through so many things like that, Mark, that after a while you just figure, you know what, I'm out here slugging. And if Bernie Sanders had won, I'd be slugging against his federal prosecutors.
Sure,
Trump is in there, and I'm slugging against him.
Just because you mentioned this, you know, the legal profession is under fire from this administration as well, right? So when I talk about the judiciary and I'm also talking about the legal profession and the way that the Trump administration has tried to sue the law firms and has threatened law firms, and some law firms have caved and others are standing up. But the judge who was offering in this in one of these cases offered this. This from the bench, this line, which sounds like a talking point from a member of Congress rather than a legal brief from the United States Department of Justice, has no citation to any legal authority. This is in relation to the Venezuelan, I think, deportations. That the notion expressed reflects a grave misapprehension of our constitutional order. The judiciary is, quote, independent, and if Justice Department lawyers would bother to take a quick survey of the many lawsuits currently challenging the administration's actions, it would show that contrary to Trump's assertions of unfairness or political weaponization, quote, the outcomes have followed the facts and the law, and that Trump has won motions as well as losing motions. So it's kind of what you're talking about. The judge is saying, hey, guys, you got to play by the law here. You just can't come in here and, be your big swinging Fed guys and think that you're going to get away with it.
Well, you do have to play by the law, and these cases have gone very poorly for Trump. I mean, Trump can do, because he doesn't care about the rule of law. He doesn't care. I think that, well, first of all, he doesn't have the good lawyers that he had the first time around. He hasn't tried to have those kind of folks. He's tried to marginalize or get rid of those kind of folks, and a lot of those kind of folks with great legal reputations don't want to work for him. I think they thought that he would push an agenda that was maybe, Reaganite in some ways. It was sort of some of the excesses of W, but it wasn't going to be this wholesale chaos and disrespect for the law. So I don't think that he's got that great legal talents. In terms of what he's done with these law firms, I find this case actually very disturbing. I have a lot of thoughts about it, if you can just give me a minute on it. There's some very high prominent law firms. I mean, they're really the top law firms. And to some extent, and they love to brag how they do all this pro bono work, and a lot of them do a lot of pro bono work. If you really want to go into pro bono work, a lot of young lawyers decide to just go do pro bono work. If you want to work for environmental law, go work for an environmental organization that fights environmental cases to help the environment. Don't go for a big law firm that devotes 5% of its practice when it's not charging $1,000 an hour. But I respect totally the young lawyers who go to work for these big law firms. The big law firms themselves, Mark, are like major industry. They're full of people who've made partner there who really do make $5 million a year or more. So when you look at a firm like Paul Weiss in New York City, it's a famous, very rich, high-earning law firm. When they talk about their senior partners standing up to Trump, okay, they're not, at least during Trump, they're not going to average $5 to $10 million a year if they fight Trump all the time. They're just not. They're going to make less money. They're going to not be able to pay their club dues, all of that kind of stuff. That's the world that they live in. And so I think, Mark, it was difficult on one level to show that solidarity. People said, my God, if anyone could afford to fight them, it was Paul Weiss. And yes, Paul Weiss could have paid $1 million or $2 million less per partner because they were in this fight and they would have taken the consequences. It would have been very hard for courts to remedy it, Mark. You know, one of the things that they do is they have a government contracts practice. They go in front of all of these military and civilian government boards, okay? And if the government and civilian boards, their general counsels who are owing to the political people that Trump has appointed, if they don't hire you on every single case, you say, I would have been hired and not that super firm down the street because I'm not in with Trump and that super firm down the street is in with Trump or has more people in with Trump. The reality is your business would suffer. Everybody knew that Paul Weiss's firm business would absolutely suffer. So people say they caved. It's unconscionable. How come the big firms didn't stand together? They would have liked to have seen more solidarity against law firms. Am I shocked? No, I'm not shocked that Paul Weiss, and just to say one more thing in favor, maybe if it isn't Paul Weiss, one of the things that we lawyers do is we advise people who are in a whole lot of trouble what is the best way to get out of trouble. And I think Paul Weiss figured, you know what, maybe we ought to follow our own advice and figure out what would we do to tell a client if a client were in this much trouble, and maybe we would have gone and told the client, go kiss Trump's butt a little bit. Now, one thing that's hilarious about it is that they have, some of it's horrible, but some of it's hilarious. They've agreed to do $40 million worth. That's real number, $40 million worth of pro bono work. Mark, not for the environment, not for civil rights, for DEI people, but they're going to go do pro bono work that Trump likes for Trump's causes.
Yeah, Trump's related causes, exactly.
Against anti-Semitism, which is truly scary because, you know, Trump's view of anti-Semitism is if you say anything against Israeli policies or Israeli settlements, you're suddenly supposedly an anti-Semite. And you wonder how on earth is Paul Weiss ever going to maintain their reputation? Well, each one they're going to have to certify this $1 million goes to a Trump cause. This was such and such. Everyone will lampoon them and say a Trump cause. That's it. You're going and the young lawyers who are brilliant who are going there are going to say, "Oh my God, those aren't my causes." To the extent I'm not making a lot of money per hour, I'm doing pro bono work. I thought pro bono was going to be for civil rights that I believe in. I thought it was going to be for the LGBTQ. It's going to be for what are these great Trump causes? What are we going to do? We're going to throw in for tariffs. That's our pro bono work that's consistent with. So that's kind of terrible. If I can mention just one other thing, there's another firm that he's going after, the most recent one that has agreed to fight. That's called Jenner and Block. And this Jenner and Block's a Chicago firm, very famous for its Supreme Court practice. Like if you have to hire a lawyer to win in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, they were the kind of brilliant lawyers that you would hire, this Jenner and Block. And this fellow who used to be the head of the criminal division here in L.A., he went to that law firm. And any law firm in town would have loved to have had this guy. He seems to be a terrific lawyer. But think of the situation that he's in right now. He's the head of their white collar and government investigations practice.
Wow.
And if the government doesn't want to hire you, you're certainly not getting that business. Now, criminal defendants will still hire you, some big company. I think, of course, all of his prospective clients ought to hire me and not him. But some of them will decide to hire him at his huge law firm. And I think they'll still do that. I just don't think we're anywhere near, Mark, the situation where your criminal target can't get a fair break because your lawyer's not Trumpy. I think someone like him, who I think he's the fellow who prosecuted Lee Baca, the sheriff. He prosecuted some other very high-profile cases. I think if you're in a lot of trouble and you don't hire David Katz, you're going to go hire that lawyer, and you're not going to think about the fact that they're on the outs with the Trump administration. But I guess if things get bad enough between Jenner and Block and the Trump administration, people like him will probably set up their own shop. They'll probably set up a 5 or 10 lawyer firm. And some of the business people, when you look at a Jenner and Block or you look at a Paul Weiss, you know, 90% of their business has nothing to do with any of this stuff. It's huge corporations fighting each other, right? And so if there's some antitrust thing, which involved billions of dollars, you start thinking through their practices. I mean, Trump is all about himself. Like all this stuff is the center of the world. This isn't the center of the world. This guy Pomerantz, who was at Paul Weiss, what was it, 15 years ago? And but it's taking any little thing. It's revenge, Mark. It's saying you're 1,500 lawyer firm that does stuff that has almost nothing to do with any of this. You took one guy and you hurt me one time, and I'm paying back all 1,500 of you. You get the collective punishment of it. You know, people call him a fascist, but that was an aspect of whether he's a fascist or not. It was an aspect of fascist regimes to have collective punishment.
It's Overkill CNC says, why are you leaving out that Paul Weiss agreed to show every attorney that works for them? And if these employees are what Trump deems DEI, Paul Weiss is a traitor, is a traitorous. Please don't give him a pass. Don't give them a pass. I didn't know that part. Did they asked to Trump asked to see, or the Trump people asked to see the list of attorneys to see if any of them were DEI? I didn't realize that.
I don't think any of these agreements, even if Paul Weiss made such an agreement, and there's a written agreement. So anybody that is that interested can go look at the written agreement between Paul Weiss and the government, so that Trump would get off of that executive order against Paul Weiss. Trump made false statements apparently about it and said that Paul Weiss had agreed to certain things. They said that Paul Weiss had said during the meeting that this Pomerantz was not a good lawyer. Pomerantz is, so far, they never said that, Paul Weiss said. And so far as we know, Pomerantz is a great lawyer. He's one of those two lawyers who helped the DA's office in New York make that case against Trump. And then you remember the outgoing DA didn't go on it. The two of them left in protest. Also, the new DA there didn't go on it. And then the new DA there went on a smaller piece of it, the misstatement of the records that ended up with the famous 34 felony convictions. As we talk about President Donald Trump, he's a man convicted, as things stand, of 34 felony counts in New York. Pomerantz had worked on that investigation. He'd also worked at Paul Weiss. You see that? That's the cardinal sin. Everyone at Paul Weiss should be punished. But just turning to the DEI, I don't think that is worth the paper it's printed on, that some firm is going to do anything about DEI. If they want to hire people, they're going to hire people, and those firms do great outreach, and they get great minority lawyers, and they get great female lawyers. So the idea that they're not going to make that kind of outreach with the number of students graduating from law school who are minority, and women now dominate, statistically, women dominate the law school classes. So at Paul Weiss, their huge business is not going to be any less zealous in trying to get the best female and minority candidates at Paul Weiss. And I think if they try to do anything about it, it's discrimination. I mean, the law has not gone that far. The U.S. Supreme Court, Mark, has not gone that far that you can discriminate against women or discriminate against minority people. I mean, no court in America has or will go that far. So in some ways, that Paul Weiss made the best of a bad situation. I don't think they were traitors. I just don't. They're running a huge business. I used to say this about Mueller. If the Democrats were waiting around for Mueller to save the country, go vote, go organize. If you're waiting around for the millionaire partners at Paul Weiss to save the country, have a different plan.
But Kim points out, is this sort of all meant, though, to intimidate lawyers from ever going after Trump again? Yes, of course it is. I also saw the comment here. I wanted to get it.
But Mark, let me say one thing just before your comment.
Yeah, please.
The personal injury lawyers, the ones who didn't go always to the Ivy League schools and don't have the so-called pedigree of, working in U.S. Attorney's Office and, going to Paul Weiss and Jenner and Block. They say, you know what? We're great lawyers, okay? Why don't you hire us? Because we will sue these people for millions of dollars, okay? Paul Weiss, sit back there. I don't think Paul Weiss is gentlemanly, but, their pitch is that, why do you go to these gentlemanly 1,500 lawyer firms? Come to our little small firm and we'll sue whoever it is. And you look at I think the people who sued Trump University, right, and got the 25 million, I don't think they were a big firm. So there's loads and loads of people out there who are willing to sue for these civil rights violations and all these other violations. I think there's already a lawsuit over Chatgate, isn't there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lawsuit over the fact that they didn't retain the records, right? The reason that they're using Signal is because the Signal communications then evaporate, right? They go away. So
you don't need Paul Weiss or Jenner and Block to go file a huge lawsuit. Find a great lawyer who knows what he or she is doing, and you can win a huge contingency fee. We still have whistleblower suits. We have all that kind of stuff. and that's not going anywhere. The profit motive sometimes leads to the right result.
Real quick, the California Appeals Court upholding a ban on higher capacity magazines. And this is well, basically, the law bans gun magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammo and can remain, this decision can remain in place. So one judge, I guess, recorded this video dissenting. It shows him loading guns in his chambers. The 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled 7-4 that the law was permissible in California under the Second Amendment because large capacity magazines are not considered arms or protected accessories. And even if they were, California's ban, quote, falls within the nation's tradition of protecting innocent persons by prohibiting especially dangerous uses of weapons and by regulating components necessary to the firing of a firearm. That was all in the opinion. Well, this guy, Judge Lawrence Van Dyke, disagreed with the decision, and he made a video. So this is the first video like this that I've ever made. And I share this because a rudimentary understanding of how guns are made, sold, used, and commonly modified makes obvious why California's proposed test and the one my colleagues are adopting today simply does not work. And then in the video, he handles several guns in his chambers and demonstrates how they're loaded and fired. He also shows high-capacity magazines and argues that they're no different from other gun accessories and that can be added to a firearm to make it more dangerous. Under the majority's logic, he said, that would allow the government to pick and choose any of them to be banned. Odd that you'd have this judge making this video. Maybe not odd, or you can tell me how odd to have this decision that upholds the ban on these high-capacity magazines in California.
Well, it's funny that Trump says about Chief Judge Boasberg in Washington, D.C., who has the deportations to El Salvador case, that he's a grandstander. And yet this Trump-selected judge is the biggest grandstander of all time so far. You know, I appear in front of the district court, and every now and then I appear in front of the 9th Circuit Court of Appeals. So if I appear in front of Judge Van Dyke and he says to me, didn't you say on the Mark Thompson podcast that I was a grandstander, I will say, Your Honor, with respect, you were grandstanding on this one. This is not how you file a dissenting opinion by having a YouTube. And the other judges in the majority pointed out that really he should have been disqualified from the case, because if he wanted to be an expert and on how these, this was not in the record. And so if you're going to base your decision as, especially as an appellate judge, appellate judges look for errors in the record. There's a famous saying that the trial court is a search for the truth and the appellate court is a search for error. And the errors that you're looking for if you're an appellate judge have to be ones in the record. They can't be because you personally think you know so much about guns. So it was over the top. And like a lot of the things that people picked by Trump do, you say, you know what, it's a clown college. Why do something so clownish? State your dissent. Mark, if I can just say really quickly, because there's been so much about the Second Amendment jurisprudence of the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court did get 7-2 the ghost guns case right. And they ruled in that in a decision by Gorsuch. Kavanaugh joined it. Only the two usual suspects, Alito and Thomas, said that the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that regulates firearms, only the two of them said that the ATF had gone too far. The 7 of them said that what ATF had done was just fine. And what they're doing is that these ghost gun kits, which can be assembled into a real gun with just the parts in the kit within less than a half an hour, that those are firearms, that a kit to create a firearm is a firearm. And therefore, two very important things happen with ghost guns and ghost gun kits. Number one, manufacturers must put serial numbers on them, and they've had to do that now for several years. And also, there's a background check before you get any kind of ghost guns. This is a real problem in street crime. This has become the weapon of choice in street crime. The police are always finding ghost guns at scenes of robberies, murders, all that kind of thing. And I have to also laugh at the Republicans now. You know what the big problem in America is right now, according to the Republicans in Congress? These judges around the country are making nationwide injunctions, Mark. They're making nationwide injunctions. When Biden was in power, the Republicans thought that was the greatest feature of our judicial
Sure, when they were
system,
blocking
that they were
mifepristone.
They
Yeah.
ran to Texas and they did the mephistoprone, and they tried to get that judge to make a nationwide injunction against women getting a medical abortion procedure. They went to this judge in Texas on this ghost gun. They went to a judge in Texas, these pro-gun guys, and they got him to make a nationwide order, which the Supreme Court dissolved. That was why people predicted the Supreme Court was going to go this way, because they didn't let this go into effect. They made it so that you did have to put the serial number on ghost guns. And so ghost guns are not a way out of a gun regulation. And the Supreme Court did that 7-2. You remember they also did the right thing, in my opinion, on domestic violence. The people under domestic violence orders, there was another ruling from some judge around the country that said that, oh, no, I think in Texas too. Oh, no. People under domestic violence restraining orders have a constitutional right to have a gun while they're under the domestic violence restraining order. Of course, the other person, the complainant, was terrified that those kind of rulings. The Supreme Court did the right thing and said, yes, that's totally permissible, that a judge could say, no, you cannot have a gun while you're under a domestic violence restraining order.
Absolute lunacy. Absolute lunacy. Well, we're way out of time, but, you're just talking about railing against judges. And, Trump was up all night railing against Boasberg, as you had sort of alluded to it. And he said, that he was given a fourth, quote, Trump case, something which is statistically impossible. That I'm reading his post. There is no way for a Republican, especially a Trump Republican, to win before him. Talking about, in front of this judge, is what he's saying. He is highly conflicted, not only in his hatred of me, massive Trump derangement syndrome, but also because of disqualifying family conflicts. Boasberg, who is the chief judge of the D.C. District Court, seems to be grabbing the Trump cases all to himself, even though it's not supposed to happen that way. Is there still such a thing as the wheel, where the judges are chosen fairly and at random? The good news is that it probably doesn't matter, because it's virtually impossible for me to get an honest ruling in D.C. Our nation's courts are broken, with New York and D.C. being the most preeminent of all their corruption and radicalism. There must be an immediate investigation of this rigged system before it's too late.
I guess Trump's forgetting the U.S. Supreme Court is in Washington, D.C.
Right. His concierge Supreme Court. Exactly.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. That decided that he has a virtual presidential immunity for anything that can be cast as an official act. Oh, that court in D.C. seems to have done just fine by him. Or as Trump said to Chief Justice Roberts, won't forget it. He said at the State of the Union. No, this is ridiculous. What happens is we talked about this. It's really boring, except when Trump brings it up. Who knew he was so interested in the related case doctrine? But the related case doctrine, Mark, holds that if a judge has a case and then a new case is filed, which is related to that case, they pick a new judge, yes, on the wheel. And then the judge who has the related case, they have a little memo. And the new judge says, here's why I think I should keep the case. And the old judge says, here's why I think that this new case is related to my old case. It must have been that this new case, and it does involve overlapping issues. So it was decided, and he's the chief judge, so he can make that decision, that this newly filed case having to do with Chatgate is related to his ongoing case, which has to do with the compliance by a lot of the same, I think, officials. DHS was involved.
Sure.
DHS was on this call. So that was enough to find that it was a related case. Now, can that be abused? Yes, it is abused. There's a judge down in San Diego who has this view that every case involving firearms that's filed in federal court is somehow his. And so he takes it over, whereas the issue might actually be dissimilar. But that's why it probably is statistically impossible or statistically unlikely. If there are 20 judges there, it would be one chance in 20. But it wasn't what Trump mischaracterizes it. It wasn't that somebody fixed the wheel and now they're not admitting it. I think it was picked as a related case to the judge Boasberg, who had the related case. And so quite out in the open, quite transparently, he took it as a related case. Not, oh my God, can you believe how this came randomly to me off the wheel? But yeah, the wheel was a whole thing. They used to actually either spin a wheel sometimes, or they would pick. When I was an assistant U.S. attorney in L.A., they still had the wheel. Then it went to a computer. But yes, your judge is, and the famous one is when they picked Judge Takasugi for the John DeLorean case. And Howard Weitzman, who famously defended John DeLorean in that case in federal court. And I was sitting right there in the courtroom. Weitzman turned to DeLorean and said, "Good pick, John." And I always thought if someone was going to write a book about the DeLorean case, they should call it Good Pick John.
Good Pick John, right.
It does matter in federal court who you get. There's no doubt about it. Even if you don't judge shop, you can have the so-called most hanging judge in the building, and you can have the most supposed liberal or lenient judge in the building. And it does depend on the wheel, and that's part of our system. That's also in the state court.
Look, that's how Donald Trump ended up with the case
court,
in Florida. In Florida, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You
in state court, you get in California, you get one challenge, and so if you don't have so many extremes, because if you become known as an extreme judge for the prosecution or extremely for the defense, you're going to be challenged, and that does tend to bring it toward the middle. But we don't have that in federal court. I'm sorry, you're going to say about loose cannon, right?
Right, exactly. I was going to ask you, isn't that how we ended up with the Florida case, going to Trump's, girlfriend in Florida, the Florida judge, loose cannon, Eileen Cannon?
Supposedly, Judge Cannon did not take that randomly. It took that randomly. Supposedly,
right, that's what I'm saying. There's a randomness.
It did not go to her as a related case. That would have been extremely controversial. Apparently, the special prosecutor had one chance in 3 of getting her, and it turned out not to be a lucky pick from his point of view.
But I'm saying it's that randomness, wasn't it?
He had just the unlucky pick. Mark, he just had the unlucky pick, and we said at the time, you and I, until we were blue in the face. My tie is still blue, but until we were blue in the face, that he shouldn't have taken 1 in 3 risk of drawing her, especially because venue was totally proper in Washington, D.C. for that Mar-a-Lago case. He took that risk, and he was unlucky on the wheel. But what just happened in Washington, D.C. was no wheel at all. It was taken by the chief judge as a related case to a case he already had, the deportations case.
Yeah, good stuff. We're way out of time. You've been so generous with that time. David, thank you. We love, you can see in the chat, and our audience is just craves you every week, as the legal system seems to be maybe one of the bulwarks against what's happening with this administration. Lawless,
I'm so proud of the federal courts. I'm so proud of the federal courts. I want to sing from the rooftops. I'm an American lawyer. I'm an American band. I want to yell from the rooftops. I'm an American lawyer. We're saving the rule of law in this country. Of course, we need all the activism and everything else. I love Stepanek. They can't win a seat. The Republicans cannot win a congressional seat anywhere. So they told her, don't even risk what used to be your safe seat. Nothing's safe. Now the Republicans are going after Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. They have Musk doing. Guess who's investigating? Chatgate. Who's the man for the job, Mark? Who's the man to investigate Chatgate?
I heard Pete Hegseth is going to investigate it.
Oh, no, Musk. No, it's got bumped up to Musk. This got bumped up to Musk.
Oh, it got bumped up to Musk, because I saw earlier the report was that Trump is asking Pete Hegseth to look into it. All right, love our time together. We'll talk next Thursday. The former federal prosecutor, the great defense lawyer now in Southern California, David Katz. Thanks, David. So long, my friend. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, wow. Our time with David, you lose track of it because he's got so much good insight. Yeah, thanks for your insight. There it is. Northern Tier FPV with that in our chat. Thank you, everybody who has participated in the chat today and participated in our show and interacted in all the ways you do and shared the show. You know, when you share a segment, it helps improve our footprint. You can share it on your Facebook page or share it on your social media. It really does help grow our audience, and it just it exposes them to some of the stuff that we're doing here, and it can really be a great help to, as I say, to kind of keeping us going. So I appreciate that. Kim working hard today and hurt today.
Kim, how are you?
And
you're the one with the fighting boxing glove there.
I'm still ill, and I'm in horrible pain. Exactly right. Thank you for recognizing that, Kim.
Yeah.
And I am hoping that. Mark, it's nice that you're doing the show while in excruciating pain. Thank you, Trevor Starr in Hollywood, for realizing that. You had it too easy for too long. Oh, my God. You couldn't just stop with the first part. You had to get to the second part.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear you.
All right. Tom Graves says Deep State was not the opposition. It was the plan. Yeah. Well, I mean, how's that Deep State coming now? Mark, beautiful when he's angry.
I love it when you're angry.
Yeah.
I love it when you're angry.
Okay, I get it. Mark, could you please remove that piece of lint? And yeah, I did. I saw it and I moved it. It is a piece of lint right here, and I just rotated it around. Thank you for that. But thanks for pointing it out. Unless you guys pointed it out, I don't know. Pamela Kirby with a $4.99 super sticker. How about a shout out for Pamela Kirby, everybody? Yeah, really appreciate that. And good morning, Mark Thompson. Question: why isn't anyone mentioning that Witkoff was in Russia and Gabbard was in Southeast Asia at the time of this? Ever so safe and private non-war tactic call. Yeah, this is interesting. You're right. Thank you, Diana H., that the signal chat was going on while these people were in places where they most certainly were being spied upon, and they're doing it on their, most likely on their personal phones, which are super hackable by these governments that are committed to hacking and to spying and surveilling these people, these public officials, diplomats, and higher, right, in the case of two that were mentioned, that they were in these places that were, their technology was essentially incredibly vulnerable at the time. So you're right to point that out. I think it has been pointed out, but more should be made of that. It's the signal chat thing was done out of convenience. They must do it all the time, right? And it's on their phone, and they had their phone with them, and now you're right. Details and war-related information is in that signal chat. Who knows what else is in there? As I say, they must do it all the time. It's crazy. It's so crazy, so careless, so reckless that, you know, if anything at all akin to this had happened during a Democratic administration, you never would have heard the end of it. This would have carried them for 4 years. I mean, it did carry them for years as they ascended into power on the heels of lock her up for the private server. They made Hillary Clinton, they vilified her for just this kind of thing that wasn't nearly as egregious. Anyway.
Speaking of Witkoff, I was reading this article about him basically playing the role of Secretary of State. Instead of Marco Rubio, he's been jetting around, becoming a key mediator in talks to end the war in Ukraine.
That's right.
He got back to Moscow for a face-to-face with Putin. He's flying.
He has
all
no
over
background
the
in
world.
this stuff either. And this isn't a guy who's got a diplomatic background. He's just a big donor.
He has 100% confidence backing from President Trump.
Sure.
And so he's the one that is doing all the Secretary of State work, doing all these negotiations, while Rubio's, I guess, sitting back waiting for him to be done so he can get involved. It's very strange.
Yeah. I mean, as David alluded sort of in the conversation, he alluded to the fact that Rubio has to be thinking, God, what the hell did I do? You know,
yeah,
I could be really doing something in the Senate. Instead, I'm just a chess piece on the Donald Trump chessboard. It's a really, for Rubio again, and he has to humble himself and talk about how great Trump is all the time. It's sort of, you know, it's humiliating. But that's kind of what this administration is about, you know, bringing all these guys in, making them, you know, kiss ass. And then we just let wealthy donors do everything now. I mean, that's all Elon Musk is a wealthy donor. I mean, he's a super wealthy donor. He's an ultra wealthy donor. He owns this presidency, and he owned the social media platform that propelled this presidency into power.
Well, the difference with Musk is he's not a wealthy donor that sits back and pulls the levers of power. Like, hey, you know, I've donated a couple million and I'd like you to do this. Musk he wants to get in there and do it himself. Hey, you know, I've donated several quadrillion and I'd like to come in and do it myself. Okay. Yeah.
No, that's exactly right. He has a plan, and it will be respected because he's got the money. So, and he, with that money, can threaten primaries and all the rest. So, all right, Mark's Madness continues until midnight tonight. You can vote for the drops that are in play. Find them in the posts section of our YouTube channel. Tomorrow it is Michael Schur, Jim Avila weighing in on the week in politics. This is the update on the voting, by the way, to this moment. Simon Cowell's No, No, No It's 46% against the love it when you're angry, getting 54%. So that is a dead heat, pretty much. But you want a real dead heat? Look at this. Bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved versus wild idea. 50-50, right down the middle.
They're both so good.
You can vote until midnight, and then there are 4 more tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kim, for playing Hurt. And
Bye-bye.
see you over on the After Party Live. Until tomorrow, everyone. Bye-bye.